Kakadosh Boker Tov, Masechet Yevamot Daf Amud Aleph 781. Okay, what we're going to keep on going back to, and that's why I want the focus to stay on this, is that remember that we're always talking about a mitzvah taseh, which is doche lo taseh. In a normal case of an aseh, doche taseh commandment, right, is going to push off a negative commandment. Okay, that is, we already learned it from tzitzit and shatnez. That was done deal. But what was never a done deal was, does a positive commandment push off a negative commandment that has karet? So remember that. Positive commandment that pushes off a negative commandment that has karet. And therefore, that's why we needed the extra gizera shava by Yevama and by Eshet Achot Ishto, which means by Achot Ishto, it says Aleha. By Yevama, by Yibum, it says Yavam, Yavo Aleha. Since it said Aleha, Aleha, even though there's a positive commandment to do Yibum, we do not do Yibum in a case of Achot Ishto, the sister-in-law. Why? Because it's an erva, it's karet, and therefore we don't do it. Why do you need extra pasuk? Because I would have thought to say that since a mitzvah taseh pushes off a lo taseh, that's karet, so I need the word aleha. That is the focus of our entire Gemara. We keep on going. These are the past few dapim. This is, we keep on again and again and again and again. We keep on going. So therefore, like this, on yesterday's daf, just on the bottom part, the Gemara is going to say, right? Amar Rishimi Barashi just says this Tana is not because it's a positive commandment pushing off a negative commandment that has karet, but rather it's because of a kal v'chomer. Meaning, I could have made a kal v'chomer. What's the kal v'chomer? And this is how we finished off yesterday. The kal v'chomer is that what does it mean when we say mechalei mot yumat? And we're talking about b'shar melachot. So I would have had a kal v'chomer to do with mitab betin. What does that mean? We know that if somebody is going to, we said in the Torah, lo tavaru esh b'chol shotechem yom Shabbat. You're not allowed to make a fire on Shabbat, right? And we already know you're not allowed to do melacha on Shabbat. That was yesterday's daf. Why do we need both things? You just told me, right? Lo tavaru esh b'chol shotechem. And you told me lo ta'aseh kol melacha, right? Lo ta'aseh kol melacha is in Yitro, right? Which is the 10 Commandments, right? When it says lo tavaru esh b'chol shotechem, that's in Parashat Vayakel. That it says do not make a fire. Why did I need this extra pasuk? So we had a machloka between Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Natan. Now we're making a kal v'chomer. Listen to the kal v'chomer. Uma avodah, just like avodah. And this is where we're starting today's daf. We actually did this yesterday. This is how we finished. We said, just like the service in the Bet HaMikdash, which is chamura and it pushes off Shabbat. At the end of the day, we cannot bring nedarim and nedavot on Shabbat. But regular korbanot, the korbanot of the tamid, musab, we bring them on Shabbat. Now, 1 second. We are being mechalel Shabbat. When you do shchita, you're mechalel Shabbat. And you're putting the animals, you're throwing them on the fire. You're being mechalel Shabbat. You're doing all these different things of mechalel Shabbat. So says the Gemara, it's a kal v'chomer. What's a kal v'chomer? Just like avodah, which is chamura and it pushes off Shabbat, letzicha, murder, docheota is going to push it off. What does that mean? Somebody that's chayav mitah. For example, you have a kohen that he's in the service of the Bet HaMikdash. He's inside the Bet HaMikdash. You're going to go into the Bet HaMikdash and take him out of the Bet HaMikdash. So it says, Shneimar, but it says in the pasuk, from a mizbeach, you're going to take him and you're going to kill him. Shabbat, now 1 second. So Shabbat, that is pushed off because of avodah, enodin, right? Sheteher etzicha tocheota. Is that not halacha that for sure the tzicha should also push it off? Which means, 1 second, what's more chamur, Shabbat or avodah? We just said avodah because you do avodah on the Bet HaMikdash. What's more chamur, the tzicha or avodah? The tzicha, because from the mizbeach you're going to come and you're going to take the person to kill him. So therefore, if right now, right, avodah is yoter chamur Shabbat and the tzicha is yoter chamur avodah, so then kal v'chomer, right, the what? That the tzicha is going to push off the Shabbat. Because if the tzicha pushes off avodah and avodah pushes off Shabbat, so therefore kal v'chomer, the tzicha pushes off Shabbat. So therefore you would do mitab bedin even on Shabbat. That's what we just said. So if you remember, we're going back to Vav Amud Bet because this is where today's daf is based upon. In Vav Amud Bet, if you go back, I'm going to read it outside and I'm going to read to you what it says. Mishum Rabbi Yishmael Amar Tamid Echad. Says Rabbi Yishmael in the name of a Tamid, since it says in Devarim He says, yeah, he says, since it says that when a person is going to have a mishpat mavet and he's going to die, I would have thought that we kill him whether it's on Shabbat or during the weekday. What does it mean, michalel motumat? Right, that if you're going to be michalel Shabbat, you get killed on everything else except for mitabedin. Or eno ella, or maybe it's not, but rather these words. Pay attention to what I just said. O eno ella, even mitabedin, you're not allowed to do on Shabbat. So mani mikayim veumat. What does it mean that you have to kill the guy? Bachol velo b'Shabbat. O eno, or maybe no, even on Shabbat, right? And you're in what? Tamul lomar. That means even on Shabbat you would kill the person that's chayamita. Tamul lomar comes to teach you. Lo tevarush b'chol moshotechem. It says you're not allowed to make a fire b'chol moshotechem. So they don't learn it from the lo tevarush, because we already learned that lo tevarush was a machloket Rabbi Natan Rabbi Yosef. Is it lelav yatzta, which means that it's only going to become a negative commandment and not a karet for fire, not like any other type of a melacha that was Rabbi Yosef, or let it be that which is l'chalek yatzta. Chalek yatzta means that it's going to be mechalek, that each one is going to become a separate love. Ulhalanu omer, and there it says, moshavot amurim lalan, mitat betin, af moshavot omrim kan, is lo tvaruesh, which means we have a gzera shava, moshavot, that we do not do it. Okay, we do not do the mitabedin. So now the Gemara is going to say, my eno o eno de ka'amar. What does it mean now when it says, or maybe not? What's the maybe not now? What is the, we want to get rid of this kal v'chomer. Remember, gzera shava, since it's one word with another word, and you learn it from your rabbi, even if you have a question against the gzera shava, you cannot push it off. Right? Why? Because you have the two words which are compared, and I learned it from my rabbi. I cannot push it off. A kal v'chomer, all I need to push it off, because it's a lower level, right? All I need to do is refute the kal v'chomer. I ask a question against the kal v'chomer. Once I ask the question against the kal v'chomer, that's it. I knock down the kal v'chomer. So says the Gemara, hachi kamar. This is what it means to say. Kivurat met mitzvah tochiach. Kivurat met mitzvah. When you have a met mitzvah, remember, a met mitzvah means somebody dies without anybody that's going to bury them. That's going to be tochiach against the kal v'chomer. Why? Shedoche et ha'avodah. Met mitzvah pushes off the avodah. Meaning, imagine right now the Kohen is going to go to do the service of Bet HaMikdash, and he finds the met mitzvah. What should he do? The met mitzvah or the met mitzvah? The mitzvah. However, though, it's not doche Shabbat. Which means I wanted to bring you a proof that avodah, right, was stricter than Shabbat. Retzicha, more stricter than avodah. So if retzicha is more stricter than avodah, and avodah is more stricter than Shabbat, so therefore, right, retzicha means to kill the person's mechalel Shabbat, or whatever the case was, mechalel Shabbat, or any mitabedin, that's going to be more, that's like retzicha, is going to be more chamor than Shabbat. So you should kill the guy even on Shabbat. That was the kal v'chomer. Says the Gemara, what about met mitzvah? Met mitzvah pushes off avodah, doesn't push off Shabbat. On Shabbat, because of the muktzah and everything else, you don't start digging a pit and burying somebody. Met mitzvah, you don't do nothing on Shabbat. But it does push off avodah. So I found you a case where Shabbat is yoter chamur mi avodah, and therefore I avoided the kal v'chomer. So says the Gemara, right? 1 second. So now, had the Raman, then we said, 1 second, kivurat met mitzvah tidcha shaba mi kal v'chomer. 1 second. Now that I just realized I rebutted the kal v'chomer, I went again. Now we should say make a kal v'chomer bemet, just like we did by before. Maybe bemet kivurat mitzvah should push off the Shabbat. Why? From a kal v'chomer, just like this kal v'chomer. Just like avodah pushes off Shabbat, kivurat met mitzvah pushes off, right, the Shabbat as well. Why? Kivurat met mitzvah. How do we know kivurat met mitzvah pushes off avodah? It says you learn v'lachoto, right? If you look, right, it says by met mitzvah, v'lachoto. This is to do with the litameh metim, right? It says over there by the Nazir, al nefesh met lo yavo. On a person that's met, the Nazir cannot become a tameh met. That's one of the things of the Nazir. He can't drink wine. Right? A Nazir, you know what a Nazir is, yeah? Long hair, cannot become tameh met. So you cannot become al nefesh met lo yavo. It says mefurash. Nefesh met lo yavo. La'aviv li'imo לאחיו ולאחותו לא ייתם עליהם ממותם. So 1 second, if it already comes and tells you, הנפש מת לא יבוא, why did it have to tell you, אביו, אמו, אחיו, אמתותו? Why do you have to tell you that? So he says, so therefore he says, לאביו שונו מטמא במצווה. So from there, basically, we come and we learn, right? And we keep on saying about לאמו, לאחיו, לאחותו. So basically, because each one had to teach you something new. But from the word לאחותו, we learn that kvurat met mitzvah is doche. So therefore, from achoto, we learn that if it's a met mitzvah, he does have to bury him, right? That means a nazir would bury him. So therefore, he comes and he says, "Oh, right, Shabbat shenidcha mipnei avodah." So if Shabbat is going to be pushed off because of avodah, en odin shetek kvurat met mitzvah doche ota. So therefore, we come and we said like this. 1 second. We said a kal v'chomer. Avodah is more chamur than Shabbat. Okay, but it pushes off Shabbat. Retzicha, which means when we kill from Medin, is more chamor than Avodah. So Kal V'chomer, the Retzicha pushes off Shabbat. That was the Kal V'chomer. We asked, the mitzvah is opposite, pushes off Avodah, but it doesn't push off Shabbat. So says the Gemara, you know what? Maybe you're right. Maybe mitzvah should push off Shabbat. Why? If mitzvah pushes off Avodah, and you learn it from the word V'lachoto, so then Kal V'chomer, if Avodah is yoter chamor mi Shabbat, so mitzvah should push off Shabbat. So says the Gemara, Tamulomar lo tevaru esh b'chol mashotechem vayol elechem. That's why we needed the Gzera Shabbat. Meaning, not because of an aseh pushes off a lo ta'aseh sheyesh bo karet. That's how we started off the shiur today. Not because of that. Really, be'emet, an aseh does not push off a mitzvah lo ta'aseh sheyesh bo karet. But rather, why? Gzera Shabbat. Lo tevaru esh b'chol mashotechem, and then it says vayol elechem. ויואל אליכם בכל חוק המשפט, בכל משפטכם, מושבותיכם, by when you have to kill, the Bedin has to kill, it says בכל משפטכם, and by Shabbat it says לא תבערו בכל משפטכם, you do not kill on Shabbat. We needed a special gizera to get out of that. But it was because of the Kal V'chomer, not because of mitzvah taseh doche lo taseh sheyesh bo karet. If somebody asks me right now, Rabbi, mitzvah taseh doche lo taseh sheyesh bo karet? No. If, right, well, so what's that? Why did you need the Gzera Shabbat? Lo tevaru esh b'chol mashvotechem, and you needed vayol elechem. Why did you need Gzera Shabbat? He says, no, because of a Kal V'chomer. I had a Kal V'chomer, and because of the Kal V'chomer, I wanted to push off the Kal V'chomer. You need a pasuk mefurash, push off the Kal V'chomer. Okay? Ulmai desali kadaite meikara, that which we had the havamin, de'ati yaseh v'dachi lo taseh, that a positive commandment pushes off a negative commandment. So therefore, my o eno de kamat. What does it mean, o eno? What is the safek exactly? Right? Which means like this. What was the havamina? The havamina was that it was not because of a kal v'chomer. The havamina was that a mitzvah said does push off a lo taseh sheyesh bo karet. Okay, because Shabbat has karet. So what was the havamina then? So says the Gemara, haki kamar. This is what it means to say. Umani mekayem. What am I going to be mekayem? Mechalei amot yumat, b'shar melachot. On everything else except for mitat betin. Aval mitat betin dache Shabbat. But mitat betin is doche Shabbat. Why? It's a positive commandment, pushes off a negative commandment, right? That does have karet. Hadar amar. Then we said 1 second. Eimar de amrinan deati yaseh v'dach lo tzeh. When do we say that a positive commandment pushes off a negative commandment? Lo ta'aseh greida. Only if it's a negative commandment by itself. As that we already learned from tzitzit and chatnes. But lo ta'aseh sheyesh bo karet. But do we ever see mefurash in a place that if it's got karet that you do push it off? So hadar amar. Then I said, atu aseh doche lo ta'aseh lav lo ta'aseh chamur mineh. Right? When do we say that an aseh is doche lo ta'aseh? Right? The lo ta'aseh is going to be more chamur than the aseh. And still v'ka'ati aseh v'dachile. Right? Still, we're going to push it off. So he comes and he says, so ma li chumra zuta umma li chumra rabba. What is a big chumra or a small chumra? So, right, so Talmud Lomar lo tevaru esh. Okay, I'm going to ask you a following question. What's more chamur? A positive commandment or a negative commandment? Negative. How do you know negative? How do you know negative? Give me a svara. Logic. No. But why is that? How do you know that that's? If I would have had a positive commandment, keep Shabbat, and a negative commandment that you're not allowed to be Mechalel Shabbat. What?
Punishment.
What's the punishment?
No.
Okay. In the case of Shabbat, it's yes, but in a regular, forget now Shabbat.
In the case of a
Positive and negative.
You get something, you get a good point. Okay, you didn't do it. Okay, too bad. Okay, next. You did an avera, you did a lot. I say you get lashes or you get.
That's number one. No. The punishment not because you went straight to Shabbat, not Shabbat because of Shabbat, but because of the lashes. Meaning lashes. No. But there's another place also. I thought you guys were going to tell it to me, right? When we mention about doing teshuvah process, what do we always mention? The teshuvah process. You always go that it's much easier to do teshuvah on a mitzvah taseh than mitzvah lo taseh. A negative commandment is much worse. So therefore, it comes the Gemara and says, 1 second. We just said that a mitzvah taseh is pushing off a negative commandment, right? For example, lo tilbas shanes, right? You came and you put on shanes. Usually you would get lashes. You ate non-kosher. You would get lashes, okay? There's a malkut. So therefore, that is more strict than the positive. And you still tell me mitzvah taseh is dochelot taseh. So therefore, 1 second. If right now mitzvah taseh pushes off a negative commandment, even though the negative commandment is more strict than the positive commandment, so mali chumra zuta, mali chumra rabba. What? Yeah, big deal. Now here you gave me lashes, and here it's karet. So karet obviously is more chamur than lashes. But mali chumra zuta, the malkut, mali chumra rabba, the karet. At the end of the day, mitzvah taseh dochelot taseh. So therefore, says the Gemara, I needed lo tavad l'shvachon shotchem. Gezerah shavah moshetechem moshetechem. You do not kill on Shabbat. Why? I would have had a havamina that just like a mitzvah taseh dochel lo ta'aseh ragil, even though the lo ta'aseh ragil is more strict than naaseh, so too mitzvah taseh is going to push up a lo ta'aseh sheshvo karet, even though it's a much bigger chumrah, right? Mali chumrah zuta, mali chumrah rabba. What's the difference between a big chumrah or a small chumrah? At the end of the day, the lo ta'aseh is always more powerful than naaseh, and still it should push it off. So says the Gemara, now according to this, because of this kal v'chomer, I would have done the exact same thing with Yibum. Remember, we're always going back to Yevamot. What was the Yevamot? I have a mitzvah to say of Yibum. I have a mitzvah to lo ta'aseh of getting married to your wife's sister. So now, if she falls in front of you to Yibum, what do? You do Yibum. Mitzvah to say, tochel lo ta'aseh, shesh bo karet. It's got karet. Yeah, but you just told me. Mali chumra rabba, mali chumra zuta. That was the havamina. That's why we have the gezerah shavah. You do not do the tzich on Shabbat, so now I don't have the kal v'chomer anymore. Yeah? So says the Gemara, but rather we need it. What do we need it for? Salka daita chamina, I would have thought to say, tehave hai eshet ach, davar shaya bichlal v'yatsa min hakela lelamed, lo lelamed al atzmo, yatsa lelamed al hakelel kolo yatsa. Listen to this, incredible. Right? Remember, this is what we read in the morning of Rabbi Ishmael. Now pay attention, because we're going to go through a few things that will be Shmuel. Pay attention. The Tanya, we learned to write that. This is what we're going to explain. We thought that the Eshet Ach was included. What does that mean? What is the case? It says like this. Somebody that eats from the meats of the shlamim sacrifice, and he's tameh. We know that if you're tameh, are you allowed to eat kodesh? Obviously not, right? Remember, when we were going, you remember that we just did this in Chagigah. You remember we went on the chulin, we went on Masechet, then we went on the truma, then we went on kodesh, right? Then we went on the chatat, which was the ephod, the paraduma. Okay, the kodesh is one of the highest level, obviously other than paraduma, but kodesh is the high. You cannot eat kodesh if you're tameh. Kodesh is the side of the korbanot. Yes, right. So it says like this: v'tumato alav v'nichreta hanefesh ha'imemea. They get karet. Now we have a question. V'alo shlamim. Shlamim is kodshim. You're right. It's kadashim, right? It's kadashim kalim. It's not kadashim kadashim, but it's kadashim kalim. But it's still kodshim. So kodshim, right? You get karet. Now by kodshim, it says already kol asher yikrav mikol zerachem lakodashim v'tumato nichreta. So it says somebody eats kodshim tameh karet. So why did you take out shlamim? But this pasuk just says shlamim. Why did the var right? Davar shaya bichlal, shlamim was in the klal of kodshim, v'yatsa min klal. You took it out of the klal. So what's going on? V'lama yatsu. So why did shlamim? No. It did. But why did it take it out? It was already part of the klal. The klal was that any kodshim, you get karet if you eat it. All of a sudden, I took shlamim out. Why did I take shlamim out? La'kish alehem, to make a hekesh. Juxtaposition. V'lomar lecha, to tell you. Ma shlamim yuchadim, kodshei mizbeach, just like shlamim is kodshei mizbeach, it goes on the mizbeach, it has to be kodshei mizbeach. Yatsu, it comes to exclude kodshei bedek habayit. What does it mean, kodshei bedek habayit? If right now you have a behemah that was consecrated for bedek habayit, for the tikkun of the Bet HaMikdash, if you eat that animal that didn't go on the mizbeach, but you ate that animal that belonged to the Bet HaMikdash, and you were tameh, you do not get karet. No, that's not. It's a different form of kodshim. It's not kodshei mizbeach. It's kodshim that belongs to the bedek habayit. Exactly, but it never went to it. So if it's not kodshei mizbeach, it's kodesh. But it's not even kodeshim kalim. It's kodeshim kalim were korbanot that went on the mizbeach. Kodshei mizbeach. There's no kodshei mizbeach. It didn't go to the mizbeach. Okay, so this kodshei bedek habayit. So therefore, right now that we know that davar shaya bichlal v'yatsa min hakal lamed lo lamed latzmo, right, ela kol haklal kulo, that means it taught the entire klal. So now we're going to say like this: hachanami. So to hear, eshet ach haya bichlal kol harayot, meaning now this is you're going to be your sister-in-law, but now not your wife's sister, your brother's wife. Eshet ach, not achot ishto, your wife's sister. Eshet ach, your brother's wife. Listen carefully. Eshet ach bichlal kol harayot haya, was part of all the harayot. Velama yatzta. So why did it go out then to permit yibum? La'kish eleha, to make a hekesh. Velama lecha to tell you, ma eshet ach sharia, just like eshet ach becomes permanent to do yibum, means like this. A person's brother dies without children. Do you do yibum? That is the case of yibum. Now, one second. Eshet ach is arayot. You can never get married to your sister-in-law. So now this eshet ach was part of arayot, correct? It took it out, and now it permitted it. It permitted yibum. Very good. So it should permit everything. Yes, exactly. Exactly. Right? It was davar shaya bichlal, v'yatsa min hakelal lamed. So says the Gemara, yeah? I couldn't hear carefully. The Gemara now is going to defer this. How's the Gemara going to defer this? The Gemara says, Midami, can you compare both cases? Hatam over there, Kelal be'isur, Ufrat be'isur. Over there in the case of the Kodashim and the Shlamim, what happened? What was the general rule? To prohibit or to permit? Prohibit. The general rule was you eat any type of a kodshim and you're tameh, karet. What is the prat? If you eat shlamim and you're tameh, karet. So therefore the klal, with the general rule was, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter if it's kalim. Also, it doesn't matter. But the klal, the general rule was an isur, and the specific, the prat, was an isur. Hacha bahir the arayot, the general rule was a isur. You're not allowed to have relations with anybody that's arayot. The prat was leheter, to permit. So therefore, it's a lot of davar. You cannot compare it. So what are you telling me that? You cannot apply this rule. Halodami. So what is this compared to? This is compared to the davar sheya bichlal v'yatsa lidom davar chadash. There's another rule of Rabbi Yishmael. Something that was in the klal, and it came out lidom davar chadash. You cannot put it back into the klal until the pasuk brings it back mefurash into the pasuk. Where 1 second. So says the Gemara first. 1 second, right? You're already jumping the gun. The Gemara is going to explain what does this rule mean, because just like David said before, we want to understand the rule. It's very easy to shoot out a rule, right? We say it in Rabbi Yishmael, but what does that mean? So now let's explain. The time we learned in the Braita. דבר שהיה בכלל יצא לדון בדבר חדש, שיהיה רשאי להחזירו לכלו, עד שיחזירו לכלו בפירוש. כיצד, what is the case? We're talking about מצורע. It says, ושחט את הכבש במקום אשר ישחט את החטא ואת העולה במקום הקודש, כי כחטאת האשם ההוא לכהן. Remember that an asham in a chatat, right? You have to shechitato batzafon. They're kodshe kadashim. Remember that they learn it from the asham, which means a chatat is like an asham. These are kodshe kadashim. They always have to do the shechita batzafon. Okay, so it says over here, the shachat the keves, you have to do the shechita of the keves, just like where you did the shechita of the chatat, right? V'ta'olam bimkom hakodesh, has to be in the kodesh. Ki kachatat ha'asham ha'u lakohen, because this is the asham is just like the chatat. Okay, so it says the Gemara 1 second. She'en talmud lomar kachatat kasham. We already know that the asham is like the chatat. So therefore, why did it have to tell you kachatat ha'asham ha'u lakohen? It is like that. Why? Why did I have to tell you? Meaning, I took it out of the pasuk to teach you davar chadash. What is davar chadash? Umata mulumar kachatat ha'asham. Lefi shiatza ha'asham metzorah. The ha'asham metzorah is different. Lidom davar chadash. To be done with davar chadash. What is it coming to teach you? Al boen yado v'al boen raglo imanit. The metzorah has a special din. What's the special din of the metzorah? You have to come and you have to sprinkle the blood on the boen yad yamini, on the boen of the yad and the boen of the regel, right? You have to do that. So therefore, he comes and it says like this. Yachol, I would have thought to say, lo yeh taun matan damim emunim b'mizbeach. 1 second. If I took it out of the pasuk and I told you a din chadash, davar chadash. What is a davar chadash? That in Asham you have to sprinkle the blood gam al boen yadov gam al boen raglo imanit, right? On the boen of the yad, the big toe and the big finger. The boen, right? The thumb and the big toe, right? Of the feet, of the right. Everything is always on right. So I would have thought to say, right, that it doesn't need then matan damim. Matan damim means the sprinkling of the blood or the emurim on the mizbeach, because I took it out, right? Zayin amubet Talmud lomar comes to teach you ki kachatat ha'ashamu, which means like that. I already took asham metzorah out of the picture. How did I took it out of the picture? There's a davar chadash. What's the davar chadash? Matan damim. You sprinkle on the metzorah. So if I took it out of the picture, I brought it back into the picture. How did I bring it back into the picture? I said, kachatat ha'ashamu. Ma chatat you need matan damim ve'emurim al mizbeach. So to asham taun matan damim ve'emurim al mizbeach. Okay? So now says the Gemara, V'lo ahadre akra. If I would have not brought it back into the pasuk, because did you realize what happened? I had a din chadash by asham. So the Torah took out the asham because it taught you a din chadash. I had to bring it back in. How did it bring it back in? When it said kachatat, ki kachatat asham hu, I had to bring it back in. But now says the Gemara, Ilo ahadre akra. If I wouldn't have brought it back in, havamina, I would have had the havamina. Lemay din nafak, nafak. Umay din lo nafak, lo nafak. Right? Whatever it took it out, and what I didn't take it out, it wouldn't have taken out. Which means I only took it out just for matan damim, just that you have to put blood on the bohen of yadov raglo. But whatever I didn't take it out, it stays the same as a chatat. As a chanabi, I would have said, hava mina, I would have thought to say, eshet ach de ishtera, ishterai. Shara rayot, no. So I would have thought to say the exact same halacha. Just like over here, the asham took out, and that's the only thing which is a dan b'davar chadash. And I'm only, so therefore the same thing. Eshet ach, which is your brother's wife, is the only one that I permitted for yibum. Be'arayot. I didn't permit yibum for anybody else. So for whatever was ishtere, was ishtere. Shara rayot was not going to be ishtere. So therefore, kamarnu. So therefore we go back again to the beginning of the Gemara a few days ago. Why do we need a gzera shava by achot ishto yevama yavo alea that you're not allowed to do yibum with achot ishto? Here we're learning, if I'm doing it just like with the davar chadash, all right, the davar sheyatza, davar sheya bichavek tzad davar chadash, ad sheyachzor b'frush. So if I'm only going to learn it from here, right? So therefore, I don't need a gzera shava to teach you you're not allowed to have relations with your achot ishto, because the only one that we permitted was eshetach, because ishtere, because I took it out the davar chadash. So it says I would have thought to say tete b'manatzin. Mamatzinu is a binyanav. You know what a binyanav is? I'm going to bring down two different things, and we're going to put them together and say this is the building block for everything else. Says the Gemara, Teiti b'mamatzinu me'eshet ach. I would have learned it from eshet ach. Ma eshet ach miyabma. Right, just like eshet ach, you do yibum. So to achot isha, you do yibum. You're right. I don't learn it because of davar chadash, right? But I learned it from binyan av. Binyan av means is that this was taught to us as a building block that I apply to many other halachot as well. It's not a gzera shava, because gzera shava is using two words together and then coming and accepting it from your rabbi. It's not a kal v'chomer, because there's no kal v'chomer here. One is lighter and one is more thing. Not because of that. It's a mamatzinu. Mamatzinu is just like we found that the Torah permitted by eshet ach, so too the Torah is going to permit by achot ishto. It's a mama binyan av. It's like a building block to learn from anything else. So says the Gemara, I can't do that. Midami, can you compare both cases? Hatam chadi surah, hacha trei surah. What does that mean? By eshet ach, there's only one isur. What is the one isur? When the brother dies, that was eshet ach, and now you have to do yibum against one isur. Here by achot ishto, right? There's two isurim. Why is there two isurim? Eshet ach plus achot ishto. It's in the same woman. You have two isurim. She's your sister-in-law, right? And she's also your wife's sister. Because remember, it's the same woman. It doesn't exist that you do yibum to your wife's sister unless your wife's sister is married to your brother. Because that's yibum. Yibum has to be to your brother. So therefore, two brothers got married to two sisters. So therefore, this woman now, she's also your brother's wife, which is one isur, and she's also your sister's, your wife's sister. Your wife's sister. So there's two isurim. So you can't do a mamatzinu. A mamatzinu you could do if they're both on the same level, but not if one is one isur and one is two isurim. So says the Gemara, no. I would have thought to say, once you permit it, it's completely permitted. Meaning, yalla, even if it's one isur, two isur, the second I say it's permitted, Says the Gemara, where do you see such a thing? Where did you see such a thing? Once it's permitted. Says the Tanya, we learned in a Braita. Listen to this. Imagine right now you have a Metzorah. The 8th day of the Metzorah, the purification process, falls on an Erev Pesach. Now he wants to do what? He wants to bring the Korban Pesach, and the Korban Pesach. Remember, if you don't bring the Korban Pesach, you're chayav karet if there was no reason. What happens? Ra keri bo bayom. You saw keri on that same day, meaning the Metzorah. The Metzorah saw keri, a seminal discharge, on the same day. What happened? The Taval. He did Tevilah, but he's still a Tevul Yom. He's Tevul Yom, but he has to lechakot Alayla. He has to wait until the nighttime. Amru Chachamim, says Chachamim, Af al pi shen Tevul Yom acher nichnas, even though a Tevul Yom acher does not go into the Beit HaMikdash, ze nichnas, he's allowed to go into the Beit HaMikdash. Why? Mutav sheyavo aseh sheyesh bo karet. It's better that there's a mitzvah aseh that has karet. What's the mitzvah aseh that's karet? Korban Pesach. V'idche aseh shem bo karet. And it's going to push off an aseh, right? That does not have karet. What is that? There's a mitzvah aseh that you have to send out the Teful Yom outside of the Beit HaMikdash. That's a positive commandment that does not have a karet. But there was a mitzvah aseh that does have karet, Korban Pesach. So it says like this. Listen. Says the Gemara. This is Azarat Nashim. Azarat Nashim is the Beit HaMikdash. This is like Machane Leviyah. Machane Leviyah at Tvul Yom is not allowed to be here. Somebody that saw Keri, right? And he went to the mikveh, he's at Tvul Yom, right? He went to the mikveh, but he has to wait for Erev Shemesh. He has to wait for the nighttime. He didn't wait for the nighttime. He's not allowed to be in the Azarat Nashim. Okay? Now, a regular Mitzorah, right, is not about Keri, right? When he's going to do his purification process, what does he do? He goes to Shar Nikanor, okay? He puts his bohen inside, right? And the bohen raglo inside of the halal of the azara, which is over here, this is like machane shechina, is where the shechina is. And then they come and they sprinkle the blood because it has to be done inside. Now, the Metzorah now has a technical problem. Not only is he a Metzorah, no, he's not allowed to go inside, but he's a Metzorah. Right? That's why there's Lishkat Mitzorahim. Here, they didn't bring the picture, but in the Beit HaMikdash, there were 4 Lishakot in the Azarat Nashim. One of the Lishakot was Lishkat Mitzorahim, where he used to do everything over there because he's not allowed to go inside to even Azarat Israel. There's Azarat Nashim, here Azarat Israel. He's not allowed to go into Azrat Yisrael while he's a mitzvah. But the purification, but it's a catch-22. The purification process is it has to be lifnei Hashem. What does it mean lifnei Hashem? He has to put his boy in yad, the boy in regel, inside of the door of Shar Nikanor. Shar Nikanor was not purified. So therefore he puts himself, just the boy in yad, he stands by the door, by the entrance, he puts his boy in yad, boy in regel inside, and then they come and they pray. Now he's got a technical problem, right? He wants to purify himself so he can bring the Korban Pesach, right? Now, he's not tameh to bring the Korban Pesach mitzad the Mitzorah. He could have done it, but it's only he's not allowed to come inside to become pure because it's full yom. Now, even a person that's full yom, right, that's salkeri, he's also allowed to bring the Korban Pesach. So if you have a catch-22, he cannot come in. So what's he going to do? Hoi v'ishtere, ishtere. Since you already permitted him to come inside, right, what does that mean? Here it says you have Korban Pesach, which is a karet, right? If you don't bring the Korban Pesach, it's karet. So that should push off the karet, the mitzvah taseh of sending him out, about carry out. But does not have Korban. The Amar of Yochanan. So this is by the way, derech hagav. This you could put in brackets. The Amar of Yochanan, Dvar Torah, even there's no positive commandment to send out a tful yom outside of the Beit HaMikdash. It's only the Rabbanan. Shneimar says in the pasuk Yamot Yishva B'Kal Yehuda Lifnei HaChatzer HaChadasha. My Chatzer HaChadasha. What do you mean Chatzer HaChadasha? Amar Rabbi Yochanan Shechitshu Badvarim. They came and they added on different things. Ve'amru, and they said tful yom lo yikanes machaneh leviyah. So it means this was in brackets because this has nothing to do with what we talked about. This just has to do that according to Shittat Rabbi Yochanan, it's not a din doraita they have to send out the balkeri from the machaneh leviyah. It's a din rabbanan. But that's put in brackets, right? Because we didn't really need this. Derech agav, we brought this in, but what do we need? We need that the aseh of Korban Pesach, the Haskaret, pushes off the aseh of sending out the Tvul Yom from it. The Amar Ula says, Matam, what's the reasoning why he's going to bring in his fingers? Since you permitted him for Sarat, you permitted it for the Keri. So I would have had a Havamina. Once you permitted it, Kamashmalan, right, that we just said, well, we're going to actually push it off. That's going to be tomorrow's daf of Midami Ledeula. Is this compared to the we said with Ula?